In Hebrew folklore, a Dybbuk box is a wooden box which has a Dybbuk trapped within it. A Dybbuk is a malicious, possessing spirit believed to be the dislocated soul of the deceased. Can a possessed and cursed item such as a Dybbuk box be found for sale on eBay? In today's episode, we will look into the Dybbuk Box. In 2001, antique dealer Kevin Mannis was attending an estate sale. He ended up purchasing several items to stock the shelves of his antique shop in Portland, Oregon. One of the items he purchased that day was an old wooden wine cabinet. He asked the woman in charge of the sale about the item. She said it had belonged to her grandmother, whose name was Havila. Havila was a Holocaust survivor and brought the box with her to America from Poland. She said the box was never opened because a Dybbuk was said to be living inside of it. Mannis, being Jewish himself, knew exactly what a Dybbuk was, but not believing in such things, he purchased the box anyway. He gathered the items he bought, including the Dybbuk box, brought them back to Portland, and stored them in the basement of his antique shop. After stowing everything neatly away in the basement, Kevin took a moment to examine the box. The box was well constructed, standing 16 inches high, 12.5 inches wide, 8 inches deep, and was made from maple. The front face of the box had 2 hinged doors at the top with a small drawer below. A small brass lock held the doors closed. Kevin began prying at the lock. After working on the lock for a few minutes, he managed to get it open. What he found inside was a dried rosebud, a lock of blonde hair, a stone with the Hebrew word shalom carved into it, a wine glass, a candle holder, and 2 1920s pennies. An odd collection of items, but nothing more than sentimental trinkets of an old woman, Kevin thought to himself. The next morning, Jane Howerton, who had worked for Kevin as a sales clerk for the last 3 years, was sweeping up the basement before opening up the store. She had been alone in the basement many times before and never experienced anything strange. On that morning, however, she had the uneasy feeling that she was not alone in the basement. It was at that moment that Jane heard something fall off one of the shelves in the far corner of the basement. Cautiously, she walked over to investigate. As she peered down the aisle of shelving where the noise had come from, she heard glass shattering on the other side of the basement. Terrified, she ran towards the stairs to escape the basement. The fluorescent lights above her began exploding, raining glass on her as she ran up the stairs. She said it was like something out of a horror movie. When she reached the basement door, she was unable to open it. It was locked. But how could that be, she thought. There was no way to lock that door from inside the basement. Now in a panic, she pulled out her cell phone and called Kevin, pleading with him to get there now. Kevin was only 2 blocks away at the time, and while on the phone with her, he could hear the sound of glass shattering in the background. Kevin hurried back to the shop and then rushed over to the basement door, which he found locked. Kevin pulled out his keys and fumbled with them a bit before he managed to unlock the door. The moment he unlocked the door, Jane bolted out of the basement and slammed the door shut behind her. Kevin asked her to explain what happened, but Jane was unable to speak. She had the glazed look of shock on her face. He took his flashlight and opened the basement door. He tried the light switch, but the lights did not work. Kevin began descending the stairs, moving his flashlight from one side to the other. The basement was a wreck. Half of the inventory was pulled down from the shelves and scattered about the floor. Broken glass and ceramics were everywhere. Kevin searched the basement but saw no one else down there. Kevin again asked Jane what had happened, and what she told Kevin made no sense to him. When he asked if she was responsible for the damage, she cursed at him and quit on the spot. Jane never returned to the antique shop. Later that month was Kevin's mother's birthday. Kevin thought his mother would really appreciate the wine box, so he presented it to her on her birthday. Pleased with her gift, she put it up on the kitchen table to examine it more closely. When Kevin's mother opened the doors of the box, she was immediately overcome with a sense of fear and dread. She stood motionless, staring at the box. When Kevin asked her what was wrong, his mother couldn't speak. She was unable to move. Kevin's mother had suffered a stroke. Kevin immediately rushed his mother to the hospital, where thankfully she was able to make a recovery. Upon being released from the hospital, Kevin's mother told him that she appreciated his gift, but she sensed something evil about it and no longer wanted it in her home. Kevin brought the box back to the antique shop, where he displayed it in the window to sell. The next day, an older couple walking by noticed the box and purchased it. Several days would pass when one morning Kevin found the box sitting at the front door of the shop. An attached note said that the box had an odd darkness about it and the couple no longer wanted to keep the box. Kevin was becoming concerned about the Dybbuk Box. He brought the box home with him and locked it up in a storage shed behind the house until he could decide what to do with it. That night, he had vivid dreams of an old hag beating on him. When Kevin awoke the next morning, his body was sore and bruised. Every night the dreams would return. Kevin had enough. He needed to get rid of that box. Not knowing what else to do, Kevin listed the Dybbuk Box on eBay. He disclosed everything he knew about the box, including all the strange occurrences. The box was purchased by Brian Grubbs and his roommate Sam. They were both students at the University of Missouri. Not taking the warning seriously, the boys thought it would be cool to own a cursed item. When the box arrived, they placed it on a table and opened it. A strong odor of ammonia filled the room, and the pair joked with each other that it was the smell of ghosts. Sam even started a vlog to document their experiences with the Dybbuk Box. Brian and Sam would bring the box to college parties, daring other students to put their hands inside the box. The boys truly did not believe that the box was haunted, until one day they began experiencing strange occurrences. Electronics began to fail at an alarming rate. Sam had to replace his laptop. Their PlayStation began to malfunction, and Brian's cell phone stopped working. Light bulbs constantly needed to be replaced, and their television lost its picture. One morning, a friend who had stayed the night woke up with extremely bloodshot eyes. Their apartment became infested with bugs. The bugs were everywhere, but especially on and around the Dybbuk Box. Sam noted in his vlog that he was starting to see things. Just outside his field of vision, Sam kept seeing the figure of an old woman. When he tried to turn to look directly at it, the the figure would disappear. This went on for weeks and seemed to be getting worse. The boys decided it was time to get rid of the box. They listed the box for sale on eBay. The box was immediately purchased by Jason Haxton. Jason was director of the nearby Museum of Osteopathic Medicine in Kirksville, Missouri. He had been following Sam's vlogs and wanted to study the box. He wanted to find out if there was a logical, scientific explanation for the strange occurrences surrounding it. Soon after the box arrived, computer systems at the museum began to crash. Lights around the Dybbuk Box began burning out, and many of the staff members began falling ill. The staff told Jason they did not want the box anywhere near them. Reluctantly, Jason brought the box home with him and stored it in his garage. That evening, as Jason fell asleep, he began having a vivid, horrible nightmare. In his dream, he could see a haggard old woman standing over him while he lay in bed. Jason couldn't move a muscle. He could only stare at her. His eyes grew wider, and the old hag reached up her arms and plunged her fingers into his eyes. Jason woke up screaming, only to find his wife shaking him and telling him that he was only dreaming. Relieved that it was only a dream, Jason reached over and turned on the lamp sitting on the nightstand. As he turned back towards his wife, she let out a gasp. "What happened to your eyes?" she asked. Jason got up, went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and was shocked by what he saw in the mirror. Both of his eyes were severely bloodshot, and a bloody tear was running down his cheek out of his left eye. The next evening, Jason and his son were sitting on the couch watching television. His son looked up and asked Jason, "Who is that, Dad?" Jason turned his head and saw a dark, shadowy figure behind him. As his eyes adjusted, he could see that it was the old hag from his dream. She then slowly faded and then vanished. Jason asked his son to describe what he saw, to which he replied that it looked like a scary old lady. Jason, now fearful that the box was cursed, and worse than that, may cause harm to his family, immediately loaded the Dybbuk Box back in his car and drove it out to some vacant rental property which he owned. When Jason returned home, he went on the internet and looked up Kevin Manis's contact information. He called Kevin and asked him for his advice. Kevin agreed to help Jason, and the next day he went to the house where he bought the box at the estate sale. Living at the house was an elderly woman named Sophie. She was the cousin of Helva, the original owner of the Dybbuk Box. Kevin explained to Sophie all that had happened with the box, to which Sophie just shook her head. She told him that she warned her family not to sell the box. She knew what was inside the box was evil, but the family refused to listen. Kevin asked her if she knew how to fix the problem. Sophie advised him to speak to a rabbi and gave Kevin the contact information of someone she knew. Kevin passed this information on to Jason, who in turn contacted the rabbi. The rabbi instructed Jason on how to best recapture the demon and how to reseal it in the box. Jason followed these instructions and has kept the box sealed and hidden. In 2018, Zach Baggins from the Travel Channel television series Ghost Adventures acquired the box from Jason. Zach's plan was to open the box during a live television broadcast on Halloween night. Baggins kept the Dybbuk Box under a glass case at his haunted museum in Las Vegas. In the weeks leading up to the broadcast, Zach Baggins ended up changing his mind. He stated that the Dybbuk Box was causing his production to fall apart. Cameras began malfunctioning and lights began to fail. After removing the glass case from around the box, Baggins says cameras picked up footage of mist manifesting around it. Baggins released a statement saying that he could feel the power coming from the box. He stated that the box would remain sealed. Could the stories of Dybbuk boxes containing malevolent spirits be true? If anyone is wanting to know, Dybbuk boxes can still be found for sale on eBay. But buyer beware, you may end up with much more than you bargained for.